I think the main difference is that these days data is basically everywhere. Data is coming from everywhere. Analytics is everywhere. We call it invisible barbed wire. We are guided by all kinds of analytics that is influencing our decision making. If data is coming from everywhere, that leads to a new vision on how you actually need to process that data. So where we used to just have a few systems where data was neatly prepared and ready for analysis, now, for example, we use log files with information that was produced to make sure that there were no errors in the system. But instead of using that information to identify errors, now we start optimizing maintenance with it. So they get secondary use, which is not in line with their original use. And I think that's the biggest difference, that data is coming from everywhere, and we have to be able to process all these different kinds of data to maximize the value, which might not be the reason why you originally collected it. So most enterprises at the moment are still data rich but insight poor. So they have the data sitting around, but they don't really know what to do with it in order to get maximum value out. So the example of the log files that I gave earlier, you get the data from the log files, you identify errors with it, but that's only a fraction of what you can do with that data. If you start combining that with other insights, you can actually create value in terms of predictive maintenance, or you can create value in terms of optimizing processes. And in order to do that, you basically need to take a holistic approach on everything around data in your organization. That's what we call a data factory or a data analytics factory. And what you see at the moment is that if an organization is trying to create value from data, it's usually a one-off. So they collect the data from somewhere, they process it, they create value with it, and then that's the end of it. They use that value one time, and that's the end of it, and next time they have to start over again. So instead of creating these one-offs, what you need is a more holistic view on where the data sits in your organization and outside your organization, how you bring that together. And that's really a factory approach. So it's like a conveyor belt of analytics. The analytics is just coming off the conveyor belt, and every time you need it, somebody is getting it off and a new model is put on. So that kind of thinking led to what we call the data analytics factory. For me, the magic of data science is in the creativity of the data scientist. And I think one of the things that you need to protect in your analytics factory is that there is a spot for creativity. Which means that you still have your data scientists doing creative stuff, but they need to fit in the operational processes of the factory. We do that, for example, by steering way harder on the output than on the input. So we don't specify what tool you need to use, but once you produce the result, we are going to ask you what tool did you use and why. If there is no good reason why you used a new tool instead of the regular one, we are going to force you to go back to the regular one. So it's output control, not input control. Data analytics used to be done with ERP systems, which were designed to collect data in a very specific way and then make it available for analysis. We call that ETL, extract out of your source systems, transform it, and then load it into your ERP data warehousing systems. And now we use a different approach. We get the data out of the source systems, immediately load it into a data lake, and then we actually start transforming it to get all of these derived products. So instead of extract, transform, load, now you get extract, load, transform. That's the big difference. So the main challenge to get started with an analytics factory, or the data analytics factory, is to realize that this is not just about technology. It is not putting the machines in the factory and then switching them on and then thinking that it will work. All the ingredients that you have in a regular factory, the processes around it, the skills that you need in order to operate the machines, the connection to your other businesses, the value that is coming out of the product that you need to manage, the pricing, all that other stuff that you have in a regular factory, you also have in a data analytics factory. So one of the things that I noticed when we started building these analytics factories, the first one I built was in science. And in science, basically, it took us 15 years before we had a final result. And nobody cared, because that's the timelines that work in science. They don't work in industry. In industry, you have timelines of 3 to 6 months before you need to deliver. So what is really important when you build this analytics factory is during the build, during the journey, you actually have to make sure that you already start delivering value. If you don't do that, you lose support and the project is deemed to fail.